So today we're going to be learning about how to label our triangle and to solve for missing sides. So this whole unit is about right triangles and trig to use if we can't find missing sides with the Pythagorean theorem. So trig is just the relationship between the sides and the angles. So we use this thing called SOHCAHTOA. Now SOHCAHTOA stands for the three trig functions you're going to be using this year, and then it stands for, well, what ratio is it, what over what. So if I'm focusing in on this first triangle, let's say I'm talking about this angle right here. So we all know from earlier in the year that any angle across from your right angle is your hypotenuse. So since it's across from my right angle, that's my hypotenuse. Now we have to figure out, well, what side's opposite and what side's adjacent. So if I'm looking at this angle, anything directly opposite is your opposite side. And lastly, that means the angle or the side next to this angle is your adjacent side. Well, let's see what happens if I change the angle I'm talking about in my right triangle. So let's say I'm talking about this bottom angle now. So like always, across from this right angle is your hypotenuse. It will always be your hypotenuse. But now let's see if our opposite side changes. So across from this angle, the angle we're talking about, that's your opposite side. And then next to your angle is adjacent. So if I look, I can see that my two triangles change on labeling depending on what angle I'm talking about. So SOHCAHTOA, you can write it out like this. Sometimes I write it out like this because then it helps me see what ratios go together. So SOHCAHTOA is just an abbreviation to help you set up your trig functions. S stands for sine. So sine theta. This is a Greek symbol right here. It just means your angle. So sine theta would be your SO part. So it's SOH. So O, if you're referring to what we did up here, the only side with O is called your opposite side. And the only side that begins with H is your hypotenuse. So in order to find an angle, and let's say you're given two sides and it's opposite or hypotenuse, you would use sine here. So sine is just opposite over hypotenuse. Cos, or that's short for cosine, if I look, it's A over H. So A stands for adjacent and H stands for hypotenuse. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So if I look at this tan part, which is short for tangent, or then I see my TOA. So TOA stands for opposite over adjacent. So these three ratios, and you remember a fraction is just a ratio, so these three ratios you must know. So sine, opposite over hypotenuse, cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse, and then tangent, opposite over adjacent. So what I'm going to let you do is I'm going to let you do problems 1 through 3 on your own. So you're going to tell me what the ratio is for footballs to baseballs, then you're going to tell me what the ratio is to triangles to circles, and then you're going to label each triangle depending on the angle you're talking about. So in A you're talking about this angle, in B you're talking about this angle. So I'm going to let you do that now. After you're done with that, you're going to jump down here. So I'm going to do a couple examples with you. So it says write the sine, cosine, and tangent of angle A. So angle A is down here, so this is the angle we are talking about. So if I'm looking at this angle now, across from my right angle, that is your hypotenuse. Across from angle A, that is your opposite side. And then next to angle A is your adjacent. So what we're going to do is now we're going to come up with our ratios. We're not going to type anything in our calculator today. We're just getting comfortable with using sine, cosine, and tangent. So sine of angle A, remember that's opposite over hypotenuse. So if I look, my opposite side is 6.3. My hypotenuse is 8.2. So that would be my ratio. So sine of angle A is equal to 6.3 over 8.2. Cosine now is adjacent over hypotenuse. So my adjacent side was 5.2 and my hypotenuse is 8.2. Lastly is tangent. So tangent was opposite over adjacent. So if I'm looking opposite, that would be 6.3. Adjacent is 5.2. So that would be my three ratios, sine, cosine, and tangent. So I'm going to let you do example B on your own. So you're talking about this angle, make sure you label your triangle. Now, what is the relationship between sine of angle A and cosine of angle B? So once you figure that out, I want you to look at this and see what the ratio is here, and then you're going to look at this and then see what your ratio is. You tell me what it is, okay? You're going to write it in example C once you figure that out. For problems 1 through 6, we're going to do that same thing you were just doing in those two first examples, okay? So you're going to do that now. I don't want you to solve, well, actually, in the last 5 problems, because it is a right triangle, you can solve for your missing sides. So without knowing your sine, cosine, and tangent, what you're going to do is you're going to do your Pythagorean theorem. So the rest of this sheet you are going to work on right now in class, and then I'll check it on Monday.